Josh, come up. So, thanks for coming. We're gonna have, last week was the internship, career fair sort of thing. And so we decided this week, to continue our celebration of Linux, to talk about Linux in the workplace. So how could Lug or Linux help you get a job or internship? And how it's possible to use in the real world based on, these are all students obviously who were in Lug, or in Lug, well, not you two. Yeah. These are our ringers. So up here we have Emery. You guys met Emery last week. She is currently across the street working for Emu, who's now owned by.
What? No, we just changed our name. We're not owned by anyone else.
Oh, so
our new name is Lucata.
Lucata. Okay, and she'll talk about what type of work she does there.
Hi, I'm Josh. I'm a senior computer science major.
Okay, and you are?
Yeah, I'm Jake. I'm senior computer science and physics.
Okay, and you guys know Nolan. Nolan's our president, also a senior CS. Online, we also have some alumni and current officers. So we have Mike Eisman, who was, you might remember from LugCast last year, he was our president last year. So Mike, say hi.
Hi.
He currently works at the NSA. We also have down here, we have Sam. Sam, you want to say hi?
Hey, what's up?
Sam is currently in Silicon Valley. He's working for a startup, not really anymore, called Pure Storage. And then over here we have, you guys don't know him because he graduated long before all of you were in Lug. This is Connor. Connor is currently consulting with Deloitte, is that correct?
Yeah.
In Austin,
graduated a long time ago, 2 years ago. Okay.
That's that's pre-COVID. That's no one knows anything about before that.
Okay.
And as I mentioned last week, we have an officer currently studying abroad in Ireland. So we have John up here, and John he's not working yet, but he did some internships, so he can talk about his experience as well. Okay. So Nolan, do you have the list of questions that student asked?
No.
Do you want to pull up the list of questions?
Okay. Well, in the meantime, you can ask questions now.
Yeah, so there's no real structure to this, so feel free to jump in. This is an opportunity for you to ask your questions.
Any moment.
All right. In the meantime, let's go ahead. Let's have each person sort of talk a little bit about where they currently are, just as another form of introduction. So, Zephin, we already know what you do, but you want to go ahead and start us off.
Okay. Hi, I'm Zephin. I am a graduate student here. I work with Professor Siddharth Joshi. I do chip design for machine learning accelerators. What else am I saying?
That's good.
Okay.
How to use Linux, Stefan?
Well, we'll get to that. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Emery, like Dr. Bowie said. I work across the street at Innovation Park for a company called Lucata. And basically what we're doing is we're creating a new type of architecture to take advantage of parallelism and multi-threading. And yeah, I'm a junior software engineer.
I know I introduced myself. I'm Josh. I'm a senior. Over this summer, I worked for a pretty small company, sort of startup vibe in DC. And that's where I have a little experience using Linux and stuff like and tools like that. I guess we'll get into that in the future, but that's sort of my background.
Yeah. I interned at Microsoft over the summer, and then I will be returning there as a software engineer. And you?
Yeah, I interned over the summer at HP, and I worked on this like installer wizard for Windows. This is the best operating system.
You want to say what you do?
Did you say my
me?
name?
Yeah.
Mike, do you want to talk about what you do?
Oh, yeah. Hi, I'm Mike. I work for the NSA. Yeah. I guess in a general sense, I work with compilers. I can't say much more than that.
Okay, Sam, how about you, Sam? What exactly is the nature of your job?
Hi. Yeah.
I work with data replication at a high scope. So I write in like pretty low level code to just keep data safe pretty much.
All right, and Connor, what exactly do you do at Deloitte?
Anything and everything. I previously, when I started, was doing test automation engineering. Currently, I'm doing tech strategy and helping our client think through what it means to be digital. Yeah.
All right, and John, where did you intern?
So yeah, I'm a junior, but I've been working at the Aerospace Corporation for the last 2 years. They're basically like defense consultants, kind of, sort of. Linux actually kind of helped me get my foot in the door with them, but I can talk about that later if people are interested.
Why don't you talk about how Linux helps you get that internship, John?
I mean, the basics of it is that everybody there is pretty much always just working on random things that need doing for either government customers or like internal research and development or something. And so basically the way that I got my job was just having basic Linux knowledge, and the people I was talking to in particular needed somebody to come in and work with basically stuff with Raspberry Pis, and then also just rebuilding a computer lab into being a Linux lab, with all the stuff that comes along with that. So I didn't know enough to really get too far with either of those things, but I knew the basics, and so I was able to learn, and they were willing to give me a job just off of that.
So who else found that using, oh, Paul, over there. Who else found that using Linux helped them find their job or help them do their job? How about that? We got a couple of hands raised. Wait, Connor, that's the most surprising one. Connor, you want to talk to us about this?
That's hurtful. I mean, you'll find this shocking enough, but clients don't really like paying a lot of money for things. So it turns out a lot of open source solutions are a great way to reduce your cost of implementation. So I mentioned it briefly, but I was doing test automation engineering. And what that really means is we were writing a bunch of microservices using Node with a nice React front end to integrate with their existing systems to actually like test stuff. But
So how much of the stuff you write though ends up being open source, I guess?
well, in that sense, it is closed source. But I mean, the frameworks and tooling and everything is all open sourced, and they have their own enterprise GitHub.
Now, Emery, you had your hand raised. Do you want to talk about the nature of your work and how Linux has helped you with that?
So basically I am like logged into a Linux machine doing command line stuff all day, every day. So grep is my friend. It's like my best friend. I'm like grepping all day long.
Sounds inappropriate.
Yeah, just like being able to move around and use the command line tools like cut, like just like being able to manipulate things really quickly and easily, because like the things that I've been working on are like, we want to know this one thing that we have no idea about. So like there's no like scripts already written. So like first pass, I'm just gonna write a one-line command line to see what's going on. And then maybe I'll write a script that's like, prettier. But like first, the command line's your friend. So
Was that surprising going into your job, like thinking like all that stuff you learned in the past was something you were doing every day?
If you would have asked me a year ago, I wouldn't have thought that I would be doing this. But like once I learned like what the company was, then I was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. Because we're getting out of research, but I think a lot of people at my company are still research mindset. So
We'll do that in a little bit. So how about our Windows developers? How about Microsoft? Did Linux help you here?
I mean, sort of in a way. I mean, everything I used was, well, I had to learn, I guess we used like PowerShell. So I guess like some of the functionality crosses over, but
So
so I
explain
guess,
to them what PowerShell is in case they don't know.
yeah, it's like Windows version of Linux, which kind of sucks. There's like a little bit of different commands, but like through and through, it's kind of like almost the same, I guess like service level. So a lot of what I did, again, kind of like writing scripts or things of that nature was done through the PowerShell, which again is kind of like Windows version of Linux, but more or less, I kind of use it 2 to 3 times a week, which was pretty frequent, but yeah.
How would you say the ideas translated into PowerShell?
I mean, I'm no expert, but I'd say like pretty like closely. So like all the same commands were relatively same. Obviously Linux has its own like use cases. I didn't do much in there. I just kind of wrote like a few scripts, just kind of pull data, I guess. But yeah.
And Josh, how about your startup? Was it useful?
Yeah, like I think the cases in which I used Linux were kind of unique. So we were sort of a startup building a web app for a consulting firm. We worked very closely with them, so essentially we were like 1-in-1 with the consulting firm. But the nature of their work was sort of they were concerned with large amounts of data because they consulted companies for mergers and acquisitions, things like that. And specifically the type of data was like trade data. So like, how many pounds of whatever are shipped across the US by boat or by truck or by airplane, all sorts of stuff. So the company was really concerned in basically going to like free online sources like that the US government has and pulling massive amounts of data and then processing it. Now I was just the intern, so I didn't do they did some fancy sort of machine learning stuff to process all the data and predict trends. I was more on like the side of pulling and grabbing things. And to do all this, they kind of function through Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services is a lot of things. You can do a lot of things with it, but essentially the way we used it was commissioning machines to do things for us because we don't want to run the things on either our own computers or the work computers that they gave us. Because a lot of these tasks, just pulling a bunch of data is, is very, can be very heavy for your machine and you don't want to gunk it up. So actually what we would do is Amazon Web Services, you can kind of like build a computer and then you could give it a task essentially. So we would build Linux machines. We'd say, give it this much memory, we want this many cores, and then we'd run a task on it, which was a really interesting application of it. I guess like a specific case is we had in Dropbox 100 gigabyte or like a 70 gigabyte file of like Chinese data, like trade data. And I had to get it to like another cloud-based platform, maybe like the Amazon Web Services also has S3, which is they're kind of like a form of Dropboxes where you can store things. So I had to get it from one place to another. So I went on to the Amazon Web Services and I commissioned a Linux machine, I forget what version, with 100 gigabytes of memory. And then I basically used all the memory in that machine. And then on my Mac terminal, I have a Mac computer. I just SSH'd into that machine I commissioned, and then I could start doing command line things. So then I just ran a wget with a link from Dropbox, which is pretty simple, and it's something you learn in a class like Buoys. I grabbed the file and put it into it, and it basically took up 70% of the computer's memory space. And then I transferred it over to the other place with another command line to get it to Amazon Web Services. So kind of a unique application where I wasn't like directly using Linux, I guess, but certainly helpful when I was like, commissioning the machines or SSHing into them and doing things like that.
Sam, you are in a unique position because you're going to be doing kernel development, right? So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, every bit of code I write is in that /kernel directory. I mean, because everything is just running as like services and like daemons under the hood of the custom closed source operating system that the company uses. But yeah, so it's definitely it's pretty useful to, know a lot of Linux commands. I also grep, do a lot of that during the day, and then I don't know, just all sorts of Linux knowledge and operating systems stuff was pretty helpful too. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. If you guys have any questions though, feel free to shoot. But yeah, I was pretty shocked on it was pretty scary, I guess, going into it, but it's pretty manageable.
All right, so Mike, how about the NSA? Do you use Linux at the NSA? Can you tell us?
Yeah, I can tell you. So yeah, I use Linux every day. My development environment is entirely in Linux. In my team, I know everyone's talking about like grepping and stuff, and it seems like a lot of people don't know how to do that. So that's a very valuable skill you learn here. No, I'm serious. Like a lot of people are like, I don't know how to do it.
I think this is a good discussion. So like, do you want to tell us what it's like to work? And then you see people that aren't familiar with Linux. Like, does that put you at an advantage? Does that make you weird? Like, what does that do?
I mean, so for me, I don't know if it puts you at a disadvantage or an advantage, because at the end of the day, as long as the work gets done, right, who cares? But I guess to me, it just seems so foreign to do things a different way. But as long as the work gets done, that's kind of my benchmark. I know that's not the answer you wanted, but
I'm not assuming anything.
I have an answer you might like.
Okay, Emery, do you want to talk about this?
So there is another junior engineer at the company that I'm working at who is not very familiar with Linux. And my boss is so patient. She's so kind. And bless her heart, when she's like on the call with this other junior engineer, she's like, CD. She has to like tell her the Linux command. It's like, I don't know if I would be patient enough to do
You were a
that.
TA, Emery.
I know.
Yeah, she used up all of her patience.
No, but I guess I just like expect that. Like if you graduated with a bachelor's degree, you should like know how to CD. I don't know.
How about you, Nolan? Was Linux helpful in parsing XML Excel files?
Well, no, but I remember now, in my technical interview with two of the team members I would be working with, I mentioned that I used Manjaro, and one of them was like, "Oh, you're gonna use Linux? Whoa!" So then it was like a recurring thing during my time there, where they would be telling me like, "Oh, so sorry, we couldn't give you like some Linux stuff to work on," because I was working on Windows the whole time, and I was like, "Oh, it's okay," because I actually love Windows now. I didn't say that, but yeah. It was pretty nice, and I did use Git Bash a lot, so I guess that was a little useful. And I think my mentor also used Linux too, because I don't know, she used Vim. She loved the Vim the most, and I was kind of like, that's a little gross, but you're cool.
Well, John, you mentioned something in chat. Do you want to talk about your impression of the people in Ireland, the Irish students? Are you in a mixed classroom, John?
What?
Are you in a mixed classroom with like Irish students?
Yeah. I'm at UCD in Dublin, so most of my classmates are Irish.
How does your Linux experience compare to theirs?
I mean, I haven't seen too much of theirs yet, but I was talking to some other CS majors who are at other schools here in Dublin who are from Notre Dame, but here for the semester. And most of the students that they're with like have no idea what SSH is, have no idea how to use a command line or anything. And we were kind of talking about how much we appreciated systems specifically for having taught us just the basics of all that, even if it's just that we know what we don't know, but we know how to learn it if we need to. Whereas a lot of these kids are just used to submitting their code somewhere online and it gets just run for them by a service somewhere. So it was Selena and I were talking about, she's another junior, we were talking about it the other day, how it's just such a huge help to actually know how to, at a basic level, navigate on a Linux machine or just SSH into one even.
Connor, what is it like in the consulting world? Is it normal for people to not know this stuff? Are you like an expert that people like look to?
I would say honestly, my team was surprisingly tech savvy. I actually mostly worked with developers in India, so I was the onshore resource. But generally, like we used Git. We weren't really big on branching. That was a big one that I tried to push back on. That one didn't really go anywhere despite my best efforts, but it was also only like 3 people working on the code base, and the way the microservices were split up, it really wasn't ever more than 1 person assigned to a particular repo at a time. So it wasn't really a big issue there. And then the client had their IT team who managed the build chain. So once we uploaded code into their Git, it was automatically built and deployed to OpenShift, which is a container platform for people who are too scared to use AWS or something. Basically, it's like an on-premise equivalent. So it was actually like a surprisingly well thought out like DevOps like life cycle. But I will say that people were generally like used to doing things exactly one way. And if you tried to do things differently, that people couldn't cope very well. So that's definitely an area where I think our education came out on top, because I was able to adapt much quicker to certain packages not working, or like errors in the environment, and just like finding something else that worked rather than like giving up.
All right, so we're gonna take a brief break because we have pizza here. So I'm gonna let the people up here, you want to leave them, Paul, to get the pizza, and then of course the speakers as well. And then we'll continue. So as you get the pizza, they'll think about questions you want to ask, any specific questions you want to ask these people. All right.
Wait, we didn't get our DoorDash code.
I sent it to your other email.
There's cheese and there's cheese and pepperoni. You guys can just like come up and grab some.
Yeah, come on up.
Yeah, you guys can ask them too.
Yeah, somehow.
Yeah.
Confused out.
No, don't know what's going on. You can feel overwhelmed, dude. I always do too.
So that's big. I was also just
After I get to see them.
I still think the problem I'm trying to solve can be solved.
Dragon story.
Send it along.
Yeah, totally.
There's like 2 questions.
There's 5 responses.
Yeah, but like 2 legitimate questions.
How I help his students.
All right, so we'll go ahead and continue. I've managed to pull up the form. There's a few questions. So one was, how common is the use of Linux in the places that you work? I think you already answered that question. So I'm gonna start with Zeppin. Feel free to answer any of the previous questions. 1 second. But this particular question says, how do you deal with permission denied messages? Do you have to ask for sudo admin to do what you want? And are the companies good at only restricting you from things that are not necessary for your job? So do you have admin on your machines, and how do you deal with not having admin?
Okay, so first of all, I also interned at Intel, which doesn't use Linux at all, by the way. Even the servers were Windows Server.
Nice. Explains why they fell behind AMD.
Exactly, which also uses Windows. And everything there was red taped to help, because that's what you do in these big companies that have a lot of IP that's very critical to their profitability. And basically, yes, you just have to keep begging people for access to stuff. So the idea is, if you can, have a couple different projects or couple different aspects of your project, so that when you inevitably hit red tape on one, you can ask for whatever access you need, and while you're waiting for the bureaucracy to happen, you can work on other stuff. That's kind of similar in grad school. Like, everything I do is now in Linux. It's in Red Hat, unfortunately, because the only Linux distribution that these companies validate their software for is Red Hat. But it's similar. If I don't have a tool installed on a machine, like, it's usually me emailing MD and being like, yo, MD, you want to hook me up with this? But lowly grad students are not trusted with pseudo access to anything.
John, you also faced something similar at your internship, right? Could you talk about that?
Yeah, I spent the whole summer very annoyed. Basically, especially with defense stuff, they are not psyched about anything that isn't like directly owned by their IT people being on their networks at all. And so the Linux machines that I was setting up were supposed to never ever touch the real network. And so for a while, I was like literally burning disks and carrying software in, because that was the only way that
What's a disk?
I know. I think that's the first time that I've ever actually placed software onto a DVD and then installed it from that. It was, so that part kind of sucked. And like the universal impression that I got from all the people I talked to, some of whom are like just like 40-year experts in their fields. Like, one of the guys that I talked to about this type of stuff was one of the people who wrote VxWorks, which is like the real-time operating system for like Mars missions and stuff. It runs on like all of the Mars rovers and stuff. But he was basically saying, yeah, everybody has like a little shadow network that exists off of the real network where they actually get all their work done. So at least at where I was, the strategy tended to be that people would find a way to make their own little network where they could get their actual work done. But in order to like really get anything done, you had to find ways around things without IT noticing. So that part kind of sucked. Definitely makes me want to go towards smaller companies in the future where I can actually get work done. But yeah.
So AKK or Mike,
Yeah, so
what's it like at the NSA in control?
So I actually have root access on my box. We have a software mirror of the Ubuntu repository, so I effectively can install any package I want. We have our own intranet. I mean, like, yes, there's still limits on what you can and can't access, but I guess in my development sort of experience, I haven't run into that too much yet. I know it exists because my boss complains about it, but yeah.
You have full control of your machine. You can do what you want.
Correct. I can do, yeah, whatever I want to it.
That's interesting. Well, John mentioned a startup. Do you want to talk about were you just given carte blanche, like on AWS, like you're the keys to the kingdom, spin up where you want?
No, I actually not about for everything I wanted to do. I was sending an email asking for access. It'd be like I would maybe like upload a Docker file to do some task, and I'd have to get access for that, and then to actually start it, I'd have to ask for access as well.
How about Microsoft? Was it sort of, do you get admin access at Microsoft?
No, but kind of thank God, because like I definitely would have screwed up. So it's nice as an intern, like not having admin access and like kind of verifying that what you are doing is correct. But I knew like you do get admin access later on. I know that.
I guess one question is, how much choice do you have in, this is for everyone, but how much choice do you have in your tooling? Like, if you're like, I love Atom and FileZilla, could you just like only use Atom and FileZilla, or do you like, no, you have to use Visual Studio or NetBeans or whatever particular?
Yeah, different people on my team use different things. I just kind of used whatever my mentor told me to use, and I was like, okay, I'll call it a day. But they are pretty flexible about letting you decide what you want to do. But I also heard it's very like team and org specific. So like, my team was pretty chill.
How about you, Nolan? Just whatever goes?
Yeah. Yeah, I went with Visual Studio because I didn't really know what I was doing and I never used it before. So yeah, they just said it would be like easiest for me to grasp the how large the project is by using that. So
How about you, Sam? Do you get to make choices?
Oh yeah. I mean, people use Linux machines, Windows, and the large majority of people develop on what seems to be VS Code and Mac. That's what like the majority of the documentations are supported on. But I mean, for actual development, everybody has like Linux VMs, so there's not much wiggle room there. But how you write your code and do everything is kind of up to you.
And Connor, is it in the consulting world, in your company, is there like, this is the company issued IDE that everybody's gonna use, or just like whatever you want?
No, we don't really have standard tooling for development, at least not within my slice of Deloitte world. There is a part that's more development oriented, and they might actually have best practices on that. But for me, I showed up and my mentor was like, "You ever heard of Visual Studio Code?" And I was like, "Yes." So it's pretty open-ended. I think on the Windows machine, when I started, I didn't have like admin permission, but we had like the ask an admin button or whatever to get individual thing approved. I have a Mac now, and I don't know if it's just IT's lack of familiarity with the environment or not, but I do have full admin control on here to install whatever I want. I think just in general, people just used whatever they were most familiar with.
It sounds it's really just based on the industry, right? Like, you know, if you're in defense, there might be much more restrictions, or although you were manufacturing kind of, so I don't know. Another question that a student or a member asked is about certificates. So they asked specifically about the Linux Plus certificate. I don't think any of you have that certificate, right?
Don't waste your time.
Oh, do you want to talk about this, Mike?
Yeah, don't waste your time. Just get good. Like, I know that's kind of like interesting advice, but yeah, just do it. Like, do your thing. Don't, like, it costs money and it's just a waste of time, in my opinion.
Is this from experience, or is it just like opinion, or what is this?
This is my experience. You say I've learned everything that has got to me to where I am by just doing the thing. You don't need to get a little piece of paper that says you can do the thing. Like, just do it. Right?
Well, Sam, you were AWS certified, right? On top of Cadence, of course.
Yeah, a couple Cadence certifications, but I personally think, at least for my job that I'm at now, some I think more AWS shops might appreciate stuff like that, or like depending on what type of industry you're in, I think that's the biggest pinpoint. But for me, it seems like project experience trumped everything, and actually just being able to, I mean, also like HackerRank and that sort of stuff. But like, I think I agree with Mike on, at least for Linux, just doing the thing.
Josh, did you use AWS? Did your company get you certified? Did you get training? Like, or did they just say, here's some documentation, go do it?
It was the latter. It was a lot of just figuring out on your own. No certification for me, at least.
Connor, did you have to do certification? Are you like a AWS solutions architect?
Actually working on AWS certs. When I joined up, I was told to learn Salesforce, and I got shipped to Clearwater Beach in Florida for a month to learn Salesforce. So I wasn't particularly upset. But yeah, in consulting, certs play a bigger role because you're showing up to a client pitching to do work for them, and you don't really have the opportunity to like build something for them ahead of time. So certs are a good stand-in to show that the team knows what they're doing. Obviously, that isn't necessarily the case because you can BS your way through certs if you want to, but it serves as a general kind of filter for like people who just totally made a resume up.
So the only other questions I have on this form are the words nope and a story about a dragon.
Wait, was that you?
Tell us the story.
No, well, it says once upon a time the planet was tyrannized by a giant dragon. Dragons stood taller than
It's
the
a really
largest
long-
individual. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say.
He told it to me the other day. It's a good story.
So do you guys, so open it to the audience, do you guys have any questions that you want to ask about Linux, about process of getting an internship or job, anything like that? This is your opportunity.
Can I say something about certs while people think?
Sure.
So I think it depends on your industry, but I do know that some certs are very BS. It's like some certs that I won't mention which ones, we might have discovered that you can just hold the right arrow and it will like skip all the like quizzes and tests because it loads the next content before it loads like the lock that you can't go to the next content. So I may or may not have gotten certs by literally holding a button on my keyboard. Take that, what you will.
With that in mind, are there any questions? Yeah,
Yeah, I got one. So
this is Luke, by the way, Luke.
Hey everyone, I'm Luke. I'm a junior, so I also had an internship this summer. But both the internship offers I got were both kind of like a result of connections I had. Is that just like the only way to do it? Because like just mass applying never gets anywhere, it feels like. And any advice for like making those connections?
I can go. I think I applied to a lot. I applied to like 30 internships last year, and I think what helped me the most was there's a GitHub page. I think it's called like Summer 2022 internships.
Yeah, I saw
I use that a lot, and I also networked for referrals. So I just reached out to people, asked them for a referral after a meeting for like 20 minutes. I just kind of spam applied to as many as I could find. I think like from there you can kind of figure it out, but I think the hardest part is usually like getting the interview instead of passing it, at least for me.
And your resume, the bots that scrape it look for specific things, and he's really good at making his resume like the ultimate resume for the bot to scrape. Yeah, I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, that's another big thing too.
Well, Nolan, you want to talk about your process? Because you went through a winding process, right?
Yeah, I guess. Oh, actually, some random person I never seen before messaged me on LinkedIn. It was a recruiter, and she just pretty much escalated my application after I told her I applied, right to get an interview. So then the whole interview process was just like first meeting with this random girl working at HP, who's not at the office I ended up working in, and then I met with the manager, which was like another interview of just like chatting, and she was asking me really general questions about object-oriented programming. And then finally it was a technical interview. So it was all because I got that LinkedIn message from a random woman. Like normally I would ignore those. I wouldn't think like they'd actually help, but it does,
So I guess for everyone, how important is LinkedIn these days? So Sam, do you want to talk about that? Well, Sam, you also want to talk about your journey because you like shotgun the whole world, right?
Yeah, I mean, I cold applied everywhere for my internships, and if companies give hacker ranks, that's like the great equalizer, I think, like for those things, as long as your resume, I would recommend if you're having issues, putting it through a parser or something and just making sure you best represent yourself. But yeah, I mean, what was the second part of that? So cold apply, and then, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Me too, so.
All right, cold apply, yeah, there was something else there, but let me know, because, sorry, I'm trying to
How
think
important is
something.
LinkedIn? How important was LinkedIn?
Oh, LinkedIn is super important. I mean, I didn't end up accepting the opportunities, but if you have good like SEO and are open to work, or even if you're not open to work, recruiters will just like add you and mail you. Like, I got pretty far in processes, like what Nolan was saying, just because people would hit you up because you match the thing. And then these days, I know stories from friends, they put themselves open to work as a full-time, and within a week they have like multiple interviews set up at companies, like not even sending applications, like people are coming to them. So like LinkedIn is super important in that regard.
Mike, do you want to shell the NSA? Talk about how you end up where you ended up.
So I got my job and internships. So I have family that works there. And they told me to just apply. And technically, according to the law, no nepotism was involved. So yeah, just apply, really. I didn't do LinkedIn. I kind of knew where I was going for the most part.
But you also got another job opportunity.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Is Jess in the chat?
She is not.
Well, Emery, do you want to talk about how you end up where you ended up?
Okay, sure. First I'll say I applied to probably over 100 full-time positions cold. And I did receive multiple interviews and a job offer that I ended up turning down. So it is possible to get a job offer through, cold applying. Like they were saying, you should definitely make sure that like if the job posting says C experience, you like put that in bold as the first thing on your resume. I have C experience. This is where I used it. I feel like that's common sense. But I ended up at Lucada because Tim and Shannon's my boss, emailed, I guess you or like the department, and was like, hey, do you have any students who are looking for a job who might be interested in working for us? And then Boo was like, he posted it in like the IRC channel. And I was like, that sounds too big brain. And then like a few weeks later, I was like, actually, I don't have a job yet. So like, I guess I'll check it out. Yeah, that's kind of the story.
All right, how'd you end up at Deloitte?
Oh boy. I actually interned at Optum for 2 summers, which is healthcare technology if people aren't familiar. I got that one through the career fair.
You haven't come back in recent years.
Really? We finally scared them out. Okay.
You guys did.
It used to be they were always around. There was a ton of ND people my last year, actually. There was like 10 of us. But out of that, I had a full-time offer from them, but I was kind of like, I don't really want to work in Minneapolis that badly. Not during the winters anyway. So I was looking for other opportunities. I applied to Paraveda. Do they still recruit here, or do we scare them away too?
Still come.
Okay, yeah, I applied to Paraveda, another computer science favorite. Passed that interview and had an offer on hand from them. And then I had a lot of friends in the business school who were applying to Deloitte for like audit and tax. And just kind of on a whim, I was like, yeah, I'll do like the Deloitte interview too. I actually had mono that week. So I almost skipped going to my Deloitte interviews, but I was like, wait, the Career Center will punish me, or so they say. So I was like, well, I would hate to like lose the offer I already have because like I get tattled on by a different company. So I showed up. I thought I really bombed the interview. And then like a couple weeks later, I got the call and the office location and paycheck were better, so went with Deloitte. But yeah, so my story is not great here because I didn't apply to a ton of places and I didn't really optimize. But I will say that going through the career fair or going through recruiters or like connections you have greases the wheels so much more than you realize, because like people said, the hardest part is getting your resume read by an actual human being, not just the stupid parser. And if you can get into the hands of someone who's like, oh yeah, this person looks like a good fit, you're already like 80% of the way there.
So I guess, to follow up with Luke, it seems like it sucks, like it seems like the best way to get a job is to have connections, but I think that's also one of the selling points of a place like Notre Dame is the fact that you have the opportunity to get those connections. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, like I would say, like I just reached out to anyone on LinkedIn. Like I just looked for the company, reached out, I was like, hey, can we talk? And a lot of the time that helped later on because I was like, hey, I haven't heard back, and like, can you connect with a recruiter? And that actually happened with Capital One. So like I think I reached out to like an ex-person I like knew or like found someone. And then the recruiter got back to me within like 2 days, and then I had an interview scheduled like 3 weeks later. And like the offer like the next week. So
Did you reach out to like Notre Dame people or just random people?
both.
Both.
Yeah. So you literally reach out to anyone. And I think referrals like really do help, but it doesn't have to take a lot. Like you can just chat with them for like 15 minutes, ask them like what they do, and things like that, and they'll be more than happy. A lot of times they get compensated too, at least enough for full-time workers.
Sam, do you get a referral bonus?
Yeah.
What's your bonus?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say, honestly. I don't know what's confidential and what's not.
Mike, do you get a bonus for referring people?
I do not.
Okay. Is that because of the union?
That sounds unethical.
I know, for instance, people at Amazon, for instance, they get like $500 or something like that. They have a referral. So we have a number of graduates who are at Amazon. We have people at Microsoft, and they're always asking, do you have anyone, we should look at, stuff like that. So, any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, do most of you find your work personally fulfilling, or is it more for the
Ooh,
paycheck and the resume?
Wow.
Getting deep.
I mean, I can answer this one quickly because my paycheck is really small. So I find it personally fulfilling. And if you ever consider grad school, if it doesn't sound personally fulfilling, you just need to bail like immediately. You need to go the other way. So.
Yeah, I can also back Stefan up on that. I don't get paid a lot compared to other people in industry, but I think doing the work that I do is makes me feel good at the end of the day, depending on, personal factors, but I really enjoy it.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say consulting is definitely an industry where the pay is a factor, which is meant to balance out some less than ideal working conditions on occasion. But I think the other big appeal is just the variety of things you can do. Like at a company like Deloitte, like they literally work with like 94% of the Fortune 500 or whatever. So like if there's a thing in a place you want to do, we're probably involved in it in some way. And it goes back to networking where you have to basically like meet the right people and kind of climb over to where you want to be. But if you're not really sure of what you want to do, but you're interested in like a certain technology or like an industry, consulting is a good way to go because it gives you broad exposure.
Hey, Emery, have you found your work fulfilling, your job? I know this was important to you.
It is very important to me, and no, my job is not fulfilling, and it makes me sad. But like Stefan said, he doesn't get paid very much. So I'm doing the job that it's interesting, but it's not fulfilling. And I would love for it to be a stepping stone to a much more fulfilling job. as my goal, is to learn enough technical skills that a more fulfilling type company will be like, we want her. Because I have technical skills. That's the idea.
Hopefully your next project at least is more.
Well, it's none of it's gonna be fulfilling. It's all interesting, but there's a difference, right?
How about you, Sam? Is working at Pure fulfilling through the Sigma mail?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I definitely went into my job search like partially like bag chasing, but I ended up. I mean, I came back after my internship for a reason. I feel pretty fulfilled, at least so far. Just in the sense the work is really challenging. That's really what I was looking for. Like, I honestly really couldn't care what I'm making code for, as long as it's like interesting and stuff. I had a couple late nights sometimes just because I was interested in it. So I think that's I don't know. I enjoy what I'm doing. So I don't know if it's fulfilling in the sense that Emory I think is looking for, but I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I guess I feel pretty fulfilled right now. So
You have another question? What's your name?
I'm Jack.
Jack, go ahead, Jack.
I'm a freshman here, so some of this stuff I feel like is like more down the road. Like I don't feel like I know enough information to like get an internship like this summer. Is there anything that you like recommend me doing this summer to like either like, use your resume or something that you wish that you did? You were, like,
So let me repeat Jack's question in case the people on Zoom can hear him. He's a freshman and he's just thinking, okay, he's pretty sure this is all down the road, but like, is there anything he can do this summer or this year, early on in his education, his college education, to prepare himself better for an internship or a career in any of these fields? So let's start with people here. So I think.
Yeah, I can start. So if you're not doing anything right now, like research is a great thing to get into, just so you can add on to your resume, as well as like if you don't have anything lined up for this summer, that's also a great entering point. In terms of internships, you definitely can. I know that a lot of big tech companies have specific programs like targeted for freshmen and sophomores. Like, I understand they probably haven't taken that many classes and like they like give you less interviews. Like I think Google has one, Microsoft has one for Explorer, Facebook has University, Uber has one. So there's definitely programs out there. I don't think they're well advertised, which is why like a lot of students don't know about it. But if you're a freshman and sophomore, like definitely get into like research, because I think that's something great to add to your resume. And otherwise, yeah, look for those programs because there's definitely programs out there. I just feel like they're kind of like hidden, if that makes sense.
Anyone else here? Go ahead, Nolan.
You can try doing like brain teaser problems like on LeetCode or something like that, which I personally don't do. But also if you stay in this club, we'll be like doing during the month of December, like Advent of Code, which is a thing where they release like some brain teaser problem or puzzle problem every day and you just solve it with code. And so you could just like learn a lot through doing that.
Anyone else in here want to say something about this?
I guess I would just echo the research. Like there are lots of professors who will take freshmen as, you know, in their labs. And also working on personal projects. You know, if there's something that you're interested in, you know, Linux or otherwise related, it looks amazing on your resume. If you have a personal project that you did because you're interested in it, that, you know, you weren't getting a grade for, I think that does matter to recruiters. And
Mike, do you want to say something? This is basically your story, right?
Yeah, so I was gonna just amplify what the latter half of Emery's statement. Find something that you think is cool, or like just try to build something that you think is really cool. And like at first you're gonna probably think that this is hot, like I'm just a, you know, I can't do it, right? I don't have the skill set, I haven't been taught. But I guess my advice for that is just in the wise words of William Tyson, get over yourself. And just like do it. Google you, like, you know, I don't know why I have to say this, but just like figure out how to do it. That will give you so much more in my experience, just so much more prowess versus, not that saying, like, I'm not trying to like put research down or anything, because that's good too, but just like figuring out how to do something is the best teacher ever, and failure is also a really good teacher. That will,
You would know.
yeah, exactly, honestly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, the thing is, like if you find hackathons, definitely do those. Those are a great way to get experience, especially if you tag team with another friend or like upperclassmen. And I also think the Idea Center hires like students. So like if you want to learn development, like I think they'll like pay for training and like eventually you can like work for them, you get paid and you get to learn. So there's definitely like things out there. It's just kind of hard to find sometimes.
Connor, Sam, John, you guys want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think just knowing how to, like Mike said, just getting out there and doing it and learning, because at least in my experience, what you're taught in school versus what you're actually going to do in your day-to-day are basically going to be two completely different universes. So you just have to kind of accept that, like, I'm grinding out my my theory homework right now, and I'm probably not going to need this for like my 9 to 5. Right. So what is useful though that you get out of the classes is learning how to learn something if you don't understand it. Like if you're like me and you just didn't go to any of the theory classes and then you were like, holy crap, what the heck is like the pumping lemma or something? I still don't actually know. I learned it for like the amount of time I need. But the point is, like, when you're like a freshman, like, I mean, I studied abroad my after freshman year summer, and I thought that was like a really great experience. That was a good use of my time. But like Mike said, personal projects, like just picking up something that you think sounds cool and learning it is going to get you there a lot quicker than just being like told you need to do something for class anyway. So I think, yeah, having that side project, or even if it's not a project, but just like an interest to learn more about something, definitely the most useful thing.
I guess to follow up on this idea is, how important were grades for you in getting your job or internship? How important were grades?
There was a minimum GPA.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, what was that? What was that, Connor?
There's a minimum. That's literally, I think, the only discussion I had about grades with the recruiter. I didn't even talk about it, actually. Like, when you apply, they say, like, make sure you have at least I don't know, it might have been like 2.8. But, at the end of the day, I mean, especially in consulting, you're not going to, like, there's not an expectation that you're actually going to be like good at the job when you show up. What they want is because it's like a set of skills that just isn't taught in school. So the expectation though is that you're going to be good at picking things up quickly and learning on the fly, dealing with ambiguity, knowing when to say I don't know, a bunch of buzzwords. But just like, you're looking for smart people who can communicate well, and then grades are just sort of like a natural byproduct of that. But I don't think anyone having a 4 point is going to get you a job versus not.
Anyone else want to add to that? Emery?
I mean, I feel like it depends. It kind of depends on the kind of job you apply for, and if you need like a scholarship or a fellowship. Like, if you're applying to grad school,
Grades matter in grad school.
grades matter. Or like, I applied to like some like fellowship type programs with like the government, and like the minimum GPA was higher. It was like 3.5 or 3.7. I mean, my grades and my references got me out of a tech interview. Actually, I didn't have to do any coding or technical things. So it was kind of nice.
Yeah, unfortunately for grad school, grades matter. Normally when you submit your graduate application, some universities will they won't like reject you for a low GPA, but they might sort the applications they receive by GPA before reading them. So if you have like a high GPA, right, you might have more slots to get into than if you have a lower one. So that kind of sucks.
Yeah, follow up Luke here.
Yeah, is grad school worth it?
It depends on what you mean by worth it. If you mean like, will I make the big bucks?
He's only
like,
here this is his first semester, so
Okay.
he doesn't have the benefit of hindsight yet.
Yeah, exactly. But if you mean like, will I make the big bucks? No, in the long term, you make less money going to grad school. You also spend, 5 to 8 years of your life not making very much money, which is why you make less. Because like, if I was in industry, maybe I'd be making good money and putting it away in the 401k and getting that compound interest, yada yada. I'm kind of missing out on all that. But if what you want to do requires you to go to grad school, then it's worth it. If you want to do something that's on like the bleeding edge of technology that no one else has ever done before, one of the best ways to do that is through grad school. Yo,
Is what you want to do currently what you're doing research for here?
yes,
What is that?
I do integrated circuit design for machine learning accelerators.
So, for computer hardware, it's very hard to break in to that industry straight from undergrad.
Yeah, actually, the way that normally happens is you start like a low level engineering job, and you might be like working like in validation, where you need the technical experience, you need the foundational knowledge to be able to interpret results. Like, oh, okay, I know what the voltage is. I know that this voltage is bigger than that one, which means some things. But it's going to take a long time for you at that company to get to like a proper design role. Whereas if you go to grad school, like I am for like design, computer hardware design, I can immediately go into industry, which is what I want to do. I want to go immediately into industry in a design role. So that's the goal. If that's what you want to do, then I think grad school is worth it. If you
just want to consult or sling some code around, probably not worth going to grad school.
Yeah. If you want to be like a jack of all trades, like I'm a really good software engineer, but like you stop the description at software engineer, then grad school's not for you. Because I'm not going to know so much stuff. I'm going to only know all my brain is going to be full of something very specific, and I'm not going to know anything else.
So I gave a talk in Programming Challenges later this semester about graduate school, if you're interested in that. So it's about why would you possibly even consider such a terrible life choice, the pros and cons of it.
That was a great talk. I would recommend it.
So any other questions? What's your name again?
I'm Colin.
Colin, go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, did any of you commit to Notre Dame not knowing if you wanted to do CS? And if you did, do you have any tips to figure out for sure whether you want to pursue it? I think I want to pursue it, but I'm just not 100% sure.
Paul? Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I came to Notre Dame as a aerospace, and I thought that's what I definitely wanted to do. But I ended up switching to physics because I talked to some guy. Are you a freshman then?
Yeah.
Yeah. So during the first year engineering, I remember they had these engineering explorations, and so I went to a couple of them. I talked to the guy in the AME department. He was like, "Yeah, we mostly do planes and stuff. Like Boeing is huge, but I wanted to do space stuff. Not a great place, I guess, here. So I switched to physics because I still wanted to pursue astrophysics, but then that ended up being too hard. So I didn't even come to computer science until sophomore year. And the reason I did is because I just find it interesting. I enjoy the material. I enjoy how we can just create things, how we can use computers to do stuff like this. But I'm not going to use it. I'm going to go to law school. So I'm not even going to follow any of these people into grad school or into industry. But some advice for you is to really utilize this first semester and even next semester, doing those engineering explorations and thinking about, if you can, how you see yourself after graduation, kind of just keep exposing yourself to the tech world, especially if you're on the fence of computer science, come to these club meetings. Okay, how are we using, computer technology, computer programming? seeing articles like where it's used in different industries. And that'll kind of give you a good idea by the end of your freshman year, hopefully, to know if you want to continue to pursue it. Because like at Notre Dame, you don't really start your major until sophomore year for like a lot of things. So it's like easy to switch if you need to, but then if you want to stay, you're right there. So that's kind of what I would say. Like, yeah, I don't join the IRC. Like we talk about tech and stuff too. You can see like different applications. I think just exposure is like the biggest takeaway. Is just expose yourself to like the computer science field as much as you can and be like, I could see myself in like one of their roles, you know.
Did anyone else want to share any advice you might want to give a first year? If they're considering CS or not?
What are you choosing between?
I think mainly this and chemical engineering, but I'm not really sure.
So I would say likewise, like check out like, the chemical engineering department, like talk with people in that major or like department heads or like professors and like paint both pictures and see like, what could I see myself doing more, and then like maybe even using computer science in a chemical engineering like industry or like company or something.
I think Seb here has some words.
I started with that choice, and what was for me was like, I'm gonna go through something for 4 years in high school, possibly more, because I was thinking about grad school, just to not use it and like look at a plant and maybe like sell my soul in Houston for oil. And then I saw like what I'm learning in college, like I enjoy it and I want to like use what I'm learning when I graduate, and that was kind of what made the switch for me.
Okay.
But when you're like definitely see like what is like more meaningful to you in the long run, and like if what you're gonna put yourself through, I guess like one of them is like harder than the other, I'm not gonna lie. But you're gonna put yourself through 4 years of something that's not necessarily easy. And you like make sure that like in your best interest, probably like what you're gonna enjoy more.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say like when you're painting that picture about, these two different programs, make sure you get a little bit of, if you talk to professors, you gotta understand that they're like kind of in the academia sort of side of things. So make sure you also get maybe a little bit of industry contact. I don't know like what the best way to reach out to people who are in industry, but maybe those professors will have some contacts for you.
LinkedIn.
People that have done
LinkedIn.
internships maybe.
Yeah.
But just make sure you're painting that picture from the perspective of where you want to be in the future. So if you're thinking like, oh, academia sounds kind of stanky, I don't really want to do that. Make sure you're thinking about like, okay, in industry, how do you use this? 'Cause it might be a little bit different.
The reason why I love doing something like this is because the best thing you can do is really talk to people who have gone through the program and see what their journey was and where they ended up, right? So you can see here, we have people in consulting, we have government work, we have people in startups, we have people in deep tech companies. We're gonna have a lawyer, right? But he's not the first lawyer, by the way. There's plenty of Notre Dame graduates that did CS into law school. I can tell you that. So computer science at Notre Dame produces students that go in a number of directions. And I think the question is, are you willing to put in the time to do the grind? Because as Seb is sort of experiencing, as sort of mentioned, that we may be the easiest major in the College of Engineering, but it's not easy, right? And so there'll be times where you will have doubt and you will question, why did you choose this? And it'd be tough. And the question is, can you find enough where it's like, I find meaning in this work, I feel fulfilled in solving these problems. And if at the end of the day that continues to inspire you, give you energy to get through the hard times, then it could be worth it. And maybe it's not CS, maybe it's chemistry, maybe it's check, whatever, right? And that's fine. But I think you really need to consider is we're all finite. We only have so much time and energy, and in high school it felt like you could do everything. But the reality is, as you get older, is you realize that you can't do everything. You can't do something. You just need to figure out what that is, right? And it feels like a big choice, but you can always change, right? We have a number of students that start off Chegg or Aero, switch into CS, even through the junior year or up to the junior year, right? So you can make a wrong choice and switch. So that's not a big deal. But as Paul said, you want to really consider. Now, one final person I'd like to answer the question is Tom. Tom, you did not choose CS, you're an ACMS. Do you want to talk about your decision there?
Yeah, so I chose my major because I thought it would be sort of like a cross between CS and math. It's not exactly, it's the extent of CS you do is more like scientific computing, and the extent of math you do is less pure proof-based courses, which is the part of math I enjoy. So I would not recommend the major, to be honest. I probably would have done CS in hindsight, but I mostly thought of CS as like a hobby, something I enjoy doing, but couldn't see myself in a career. But flash forward to now, those are the jobs that I will be applying to. So yeah, I guess I didn't really think through my major selection that well. I was a physics major for a brief while with Paul for like a semester, but yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about that.
And you know, that's not uncommon in the sense that there's lots of people, I know like PLS majors, English majors, who end up doing CS stuff as a side thing and then end up in this technical CS role for their career, right? And so it may be for you that, you know what, I actually love poetry, I don't know, right? And you want to study that because that's what you want to spend the next 4 years really sort of immerse yourself in. For instance, Paul, you didn't mention, loves Italian. Yeah, and so he's been studying Italian stuff. He loves Dante. Weird, okay. But that's what he does, you know, and that's his thing, and that's fine. But he's also doing CS, and so that's something you could do. Right. So, out of respect for of our guests here, let's wrap it up. Do we have one final question? One last question. All right. Well, thank you to John, Sam, Connor, and Mike, or AKK, to Zephin, Emery, Josh, and Jake, MTC, and Nolan. All right, give a round of applause. Paul mentioned that we have the IRC, that's sort of our main mode of communication. We will post announcements in the Slack, but we try not to use it for a number of political reasons. But we do want to mention that today we have set up a bridge from the IRC to our Discord server. We're gonna try it out for a week. We'll see if people are either like it or willing to put up with it. If not, we will disable it, but we'll try it out for a week. If you're okay with it, if you like it, we can keep it around. We understand that, you know, for you Zoomers, IRC is archaic and weird, even though it's pure and beautiful. But we'll try it out. So again, if you want to communicate with us during the week or whatever, we're almost always there bitching and moaning about something. So, all right. Thanks for stopping by. Next week, what is our? Oh, we will give you a homework assignment for next week, and we're gonna do open source in the wild. And so, rather than us talking, we're gonna have you talk briefly about something open source. You use it. You found a cool project. You found a cool news article, whatever it is. Just open source in the wild as sort of our month-long celebration of Linux and open source. All right. See you guys next week.
Is anyone a senior?
Thanks, guys.
Senior?
I'll just go to the library
We're
later.
looking for junior engineers.